We're waiting for our guest to come on. His name is Freddie Taylor. But in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for Freddie Taylor, we're going to go on and talk about board game creation. The reason that we did this summit is because a lot of people out there have ideas, and they've asked me, they have ideas for games, for board games, but they've asked me, well, how did you do it? Because they've looked online and they tried to find information about how you put together a board game, how much is it going to cost to put together a board game, how do you do it? There's really no step-by-step instructions on the market that shows you how to do it from point A to point B, from coming up with the idea. Well, let's say you have an idea, a great idea for a board game. Well, what do you do with that idea? Where do you go from there? How do you get manufacturing? How do you do it in the United States? Is there anyone doing manufacturing in the United States? Do you do it overseas? How do you get prototypes done? Where do you get those from? There's a lot of questions about board games. And quite honestly, I'll give you some information from my point of view. And if our guest doesn't come on, then I'm just going to start talking about it from my perspective. But from my point of view, you have some parts that are relatively easy, some parts that are not so easy. Going before, doing 4 board games, no one really gave me that information. I had to go out through trial and error. I had to go out and study. I had to lean on some people that I knew. My wife had some information about, overseas logistics, so I had to lean on her. There really wasn't a lot of information about how to make the board game, right? So you have an idea. You have an idea in your mind and you say, well, there's nothing on the market like this. There's nothing on the market that will allow my idea to prosper, so I think I should create a board game. But where do you go? So as soon as our guest gets here, we'll let him come on and we'll start from him, but we'll go ahead and start with me. So I have a board game that's called the Entrepreneur Game. I haven't really had a chance to share with you guys this week, so I'll share a little bit today. My game is called the Entrepreneur Board Game. My name is Elliott Eddie, and let me tell you, I never in my life considered myself an inventor. I never thought I would be an inventor. I saw the cool things on TV. I saw George Foreman with the grill, and I said, hey, man, that's got to be cool. He's going to be making a lot of money putting his name on the grill. I always saw the invent tech commercials saying, hey, you got an invention, come on, hit us up and we'll get you around the world. But I never really thought of inventing anything. But it's interesting because need, or when you find a problem that needs to be solved, need is the mother of invention. That's what gets those juices flowing and those ideas flowing. When you find something in the market that there needs to be, but you don't see it there. That's where creativity and innovation start to seep in. So in my particular case, one of our attendees here tonight was part of me inventing this. So I was a Toastmaster, and I was going around and I was doing speeches and I was doing conferences and I was speaking to a lot of people, trying to do keynote speaking, but that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I can go around and do the motivational speaking, but that it still left a little bit to be desired. Because me, myself, there are certain things that get me excited. One of those things that get me excited is entrepreneurship. I love the topic. I love the hustle. I love the work. I love the creativity. I just love every aspect of entrepreneurship. I love it for myself, and I love to teach it. I love for other people to see the talents that they have inside of them, and then realize that those talents can really turn into a business and supply a lifetime worth of value for themselves. So I get off trying to teach people that, trying to instill that, trying to motivate, educate, and inspire people to look inside themselves and become self-sufficient with the skills that you have. So I was going around doing those, and then I met up with a young lady named Meldon Jenkins Jones through the Richmond Public Library, and she had a organization called Beamer, Black Male Emerging Readers. I was part of that for a couple of years, and then I decided, I talked with her and I said, hey, I'd love to do a entrepreneur workshop. She said, come on in, let's do it. So we went out to one of the local libraries inside our community, and I had a class of it was a 4-week class, and I had a class of I think there was probably 16 to 18 children that showed up, plus their parents. Some parents were in the back. And we would talk about entrepreneurship, every aspect. And my whole thing was to inspire them, to let them know that they can do it. So one particular day, there's a young man that's sitting in front of me. He's 14 years old, and he knows how to fix bikes. That's what he knows how to do. He likes doing it. He has a bike. He has the, the equipment. So that's what he does. So I'm going around the room and I'm asking the young children, well, if you were to open up a business today, what kind of business would you open? And as I go around the room, I get to this young man and I ask him the question. He says, well, I can't open a business. You have to be special to open a business, and I'm not special. Man, just hearing that from him at 14 years old broke my heart. I mean, literally, it broke my heart at that moment. First of all, he already had a business. He knew how to fix bikes. He had a business. So I asked the rest of the class, I said, well, everybody in the class who has a bike or knows someone with a bike, raise your hand, please. Every single person in the audience, every single person in the classroom raised their hand. And I told them, well, look around there. All of these people could be potential customers to you. These are people who have bikes who need service. At some point, your bike is going to need service. What if you were to go around and meet all of these people and let them know that you fix bikes, right? And because you do it, you already have all of the equipment. You have no overhead. You could do it out of your house, so you have no overhead. And I started to explain to him how him just fixing bikes could be an entrepreneurial endeavor. And I hope he took heart to it. I hope it was it was in his heart when he left. I don't know, but I shared that with him. And then I looked and I thought, well, look at all of these children here and around the world, because if there was one, then there's got to be millions who have no idea that they can be entrepreneurs, right? I looked at this young man and I said, well, what's happening is there's no one in his immediate vicinity that is telling him that you can be an entrepreneur, or you can take this skill of fixing bikes and make money from it, right? Nobody was telling him that. So what I imagine is that when he was going to the store, let's say the store in his neighborhood, the local store, that sole proprietor grocery store, a little bodega on the corner that had his own business, this young man did not see himself in that position. He saw himself as a consumer, but he never saw himself as a producer, right? He never saw himself as the middleman, the mediator, that person that brings the product or services to the people who need and want it. And I went back and I talked to my wife and I said, well, you know what? This is terrible. How do I let children know, and adults, well, how do I let children know that, entrepreneurship is in their wheelhouse, that they can actually do it? I was doing a class here and there, but, there's millions of kids in the world. I can't reach them all by doing a class, just doing one class. Then I thought about it and I said, well, when I was growing up, I loved Monopoly. That was my favorite game. I was the best in the world. I don't think I've ever lost a game of Monopoly. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. So, so I thought about it and I said, well, I love Monopoly, and Monopoly got me interested in doing real estate. So as I got older, I actually got into real estate. Now, Monopoly didn't teach me how to do real estate, but it got me interested in it. So I thought, well, what if there was a game that taught children how to become an entrepreneur? So I went online and I looked and I said, well, there's nothing online like that. There's nothing out there like that. I found things by, what's my man's name that made the Rich Dad, Poor Dad? I found a game by him, Cash Flow 101, but it wasn't an entrepreneur game. That's a finance game. So I found a couple of finance games, but I was thinking before you can get the finances, you got to do something to get the finances. So you have to have a business. So then I said, well, if you see a problem, then it's on you to fix that problem. So I took it upon myself and said, yeah, that's who it was, Kiyosaki, Robert Kiyosaki from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I said, well, if there's nothing on the market like that, and I love entrepreneurship, then why don't I create a game that teaches people how to become an entrepreneur? I wanted them to learn the aspects, not just, doing things, going around the board and handing off money, but I wanted them to make decisions. I wanted them to name their business. I wanted them to say what their business was. I wanted them to make decisions on whether it was in the home or whether they were going to rent a spot. I wanted them to make decisions on how they were going to go about doing it. I wanted them to feel what it was like being an entrepreneur, to come up with situations and real situations that entrepreneurs face, so that they can make a decision on that entrepreneur, on that business, on that situation for their specific business. And that's how it began. It began with an idea, with a problem that I saw that needs to be solved. And that's what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is a problem solver. Someone that sees a problem and solves it. So part of this online summit is to open this up to everybody else out there. What problem is there that you see that needs to be solved? Now, granted, in this summit, we're talking about board games and card games. And we're going to continue. I'll continue with the story, but let's take a break here and talk about that real quick. Even if it wasn't a board game, what problem do you see that needs to be solved? That is how innovation happens. You know, America was built on the backs of entrepreneurs. All innovation came from entrepreneurs. You know, there was at one point, there were no telephones, right? And then somebody said, you know what? I want to talk to somebody who's not even here, right? And then they went about the process of trying to figure out, well, how can I talk to someone that's way across town, right? At some point, somebody said, you know what? It's really dark in here, and these candles just not making it. I need a light, you know. So, and they did that. At some point, somebody said, you know what? I don't like these horses because they poop all over the place and it's smelly, and I don't want to walk anymore. How can I get to my destination quicker? And all of a sudden a car was born, you know. And so there are always, and somebody said, well, I'd like the car, but it's too expensive and I just need to get to local places, and a bike was born. So you look at all of the things around us, and it came from innovation. It came from people who saw a problem, who decided to create a solution. That's what an entrepreneur is. So back to the story. So I'm going through it. I create the idea for a game. So how did I go from idea to an actual game? Well, there was a lot of steps. We don't have enough time to go through all the steps, but I'll give you a general overview. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll see them and I'll be happy to answer them. So the idea was, how do you do it, right? So you have an idea. Let's say you are in the medical field, and you feel like everybody should know how to do CPR, right? But nobody wants to take the class, right? The classes are hard to find. You can't really find the classes when you're ready to take it. You know, maybe there's a monetary issue that's stopping you from taking the class, but you know people need the class. What if there was a board game that taught people how to do CPR and how to recognize symptoms of CPR? I don't know how you would do it. Maybe it's a card game, maybe it's a board game. But see, it's things like that. You know, what if there was a game that showed people how to become an architect? You know, what if there was a game that showed people how to do their taxes? I don't know. But, you know, the idea is, what is the problem? You know, what do you do? Okay, so let's talk about that. What did I use for a beta run through? So what I did is after I came up with the idea, I had to figure out, how does this work? You know, I had to figure out some of the mechanics. So the first thing I did was say, okay, I want the board game in one sentence, and I'm going to get to that. In one sentence, what is this board game going to do, right? In my mind, one sentence was, this board game is going to teach people how to start and build their own home base of brick and mortar business. That's it. That was the basis, the premise of my board game. So now I have to get into, how will they do that? How will this work? So those are the things that I had to figure out. So for example, I had to figure out, well, what does it look like? Is there going to be a start and a finish? Are they going to move around the board and get to one place? Because once I figured that out, then I said, okay, I know how the board works. So the next thing I have to come up with is the rules. What are the rules of the game? How is the game played? How did they get from the start to the finish? How is the game played, right? So that's the short background of it. So as far as your question for beta run test, what I did is I had to create a prototype, right? And I'm going to give all of you guys a real secret, a real piece of valuable information right now that nobody will tell you, and that a lot of people don't think of. So for example, people think when it's time to do a beta test, when it's time to do a run through for a prototype, you have to go and find some board game manufacturer to produce you one board game. And while you could do that, that's very expensive. I found out when I tried to do it, the board game manufacturer told me it was going to cost $450 or something like that to produce one game. I was like, that's crazy. I'd have to sell the game for like $500 to make a profit. We can't do that. I'm an entrepreneur, but I know there's limits. So what I did is I made a paper prototype, right? So I knew from all of my thoughts on how the game would work that I wanted it on a board that was 20 by 20, a square board, 20 by 20, 20 inches long, 20 inches wide. It was going to be square. I already knew that, right? So I already knew that it was going to have a design from beginning to end. I had already taken care of that, what the design is, where they were going, what the cards, what was going to be on there. I had 4 decks of cards. I already knew what all of those things were going to be, right? By the time I got to my prototype, I knew all of those things. I had the rules, I had what it looked like, I had the cards, I had those written out. So what I did, instead of going to try to get somebody to produce the game or manufacture a game, I just took a picture. I made a picture online on my computer, little graphics picture of what it's going to look like, put everything the way it was, took it over to Staples, got them to make me a 20 by 20 copy, and I put that, once they gave me that copy, I had a prototype of my board. It was a big piece of paper. It cost me less than $5 to make a prototype, right? Less than $5. Now for the cards, the decks of cards I had on there, went right back to my computer, typed in, divided the paper so I get 10 cards per paper, typed in what the cards were going to say, cut them up, and I had 4 decks of cards. For the player pieces, I went back and got my old Monopoly game, took 6 pieces from there, transferred them over to here. Now I have player pieces. I needed dice. Went back to the Monopoly game, grabbed the 2 dice from over there, took it back. Now I had dice, right? I had, for mine, I need a pencil and some paper, like some scratch pad paper. Got that. And the last thing I needed was money, right? Because you're an entrepreneur, you want to make some money. I went back to Monopoly board, grabbed that money, redesigned it. The $5 bills were now $5,000 bills. The $1 bills were now $1,000 bills, and so on for the 10,000 and the 20,000. So what I did was, in effect, create a prototype of my game for less than $5, right? All I had to do was repurpose some stuff that I already had and bring it over here, because nobody really cared about that at this point, and make my board, and all of a sudden I have a board. I have a board and I have the actual game. I have the rules. I have a functioning game. Next thing I did is called up my neighbors. I said, hey, I have a board game. Do you guys want to play a game? Right? They was like, sure. So I went over to their house. It was a wonderful couple. It was the husband, the wife, and the 3 children. I believe they're on here now, the Mason family. Went over to their house, told them the rules. I took my paper, put it on their table, their table in the living room, coffee table, put it down there, gave them the rules, and we played the game that night. A live prototype for less than $5, which was once an idea up here that I was able to produce, right? So that's the same thing you can do. You figure out what type of game it's going to be, give that 1 sentence, what is it going to do? Then you create your board. Maybe it's a board, maybe it's a card game. Maybe all you need is those slips of paper that you cut up with the words on them. Maybe it's a card game. But if it is a board game, create the board, right? Just create. And you can actually go online and find sample boards for games. So you don't even have to start from scratch. You can find sample game, go do a Google search. Google is your friend. Do a Google search, find samples that you can use for your board initially, right? Because you can always change stuff later, and I'll tell you there are other ways to get yours designed specifically for you for like pennies on the dollar. But you can start off there and figure out how you want it to move. So that way you get an idea, and then print it out, and there's your board game, right? So, all right, so during testing, so I have a question on testing. The question is, during testing, what did you do? When I do it with my friends, we both had notebooks to write down ideas. That's exactly what I did. So during testing, what I did is I had 3 different groups of people tested. One group that I had were adults. They were hardcore gamers. I'm talking about people who go to Comic-Con, people who buy all types of games and sit down all times of night, people who play Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, hardcore gamers, right? So I went over their house and I said, all right, so let's see what the hardcore gamers are going to do. And we played the game over there. And when I played over there, I found out a lot of things that I had to change in my rules. For example, they're very slick. They're very tricksy, as Golem would say. And what they would do is they would find loopholes in the rules that I hadn't written down to make tons and tons of money, right? One guy had a loophole that I had to close up, because through his loophole, he was making like $250,000 in one term. I was like, hey, you can't do that. And he was like, well, technically it doesn't say that I can't. So I had to close that up. After I got from there, Then I took it to another group. That's when I went to my next door neighbors who is a family, because I wanted children to be able to play it, but I wanted parents and children to be able to play it together. So we had the mother, the father, and the 3 children sit down, and then we played it. Then after we finished playing it, we had a little session again, and they told me what they liked, what they didn't like, what they had questions about, and that all gave me information. Just like you, I wrote that down and figured that out. Then I went to another group and did the same exact thing. The second group I had was third group that I had was a range. So I think there was 5 people playing. The youngest person was a 10-year-old girl. The oldest person, I think, might have been in their late 50s, early 60s, and we had, millennial in there. So we had the whole gambit of everyone. Let me tell you something. That 10-year-old girl whooped them grown people's behind. Let me tell you, I did not know 10-year-olds was so competitive. What is wrong with these 10-year-olds? What is wrong with them? She was trying, she made some money. She almost became a millionaire in that game. But that way I was able to find out what it was like to play with a range of people from the youngest to the oldest. Took all that information, wrote all that information down. Every time I got something, I went back and wrote it down, and then I went back to the rules, and I either fixed the rules, I updated the rules, but whatever it was, I included what I had learned from playing those games. And that is called market research. That is how you market research your game. Once you get your prototype, the next thing you have to do is market research, because you need to know, how does it play? How are people going to receive it? Who exactly, I need to know who was going to have fun from it. If they weren't going to have fun, why weren't they having fun? If it's not for a certain group of people, I need to know that. If somebody's going to get up and walk away halfway into the game because they're bored, I needed to know that, because I needed to make the changes so that it would fit, right? So that's how I did my market research. So I came up with the idea, I figured out the mechanics, and then I got to my prototype, did my market research. And then of course the next portion was, after I had all of that done, and I'm skipping some steps, but this is the basic way you do it. After I gotten all of that done, now it's time to seriously think about putting this game together and getting this game manufactured. Because I knew I had a great idea. I knew I had a great idea because I've learned that from the people. I knew I had a great gameplay because I had learned that. I fixed the problems that I had as far as I could fix anything, and I added some new things to make it a little more exciting. So now it's time for manufacturing. Now, if you guys were with us last night, we talked to a manufacturer out in China. His name was Jeff Zhu from Boda Games. And I have some audio from another gentleman who is from right here, Chicago Board and Game Company. And I'm going to play that before this week is up. It's only a 10-minute part. It's only a 10-minute audio, but he goes into, he wasn't able to make the actual summit, but he wanted to participate. He wanted to give everyone some idea of what it was like manufacturing your game in the US. So we had the US and we had China. That's why if you were on last night, you'll notice that I was asking questions from the China manufacturer so that we can compare it to the US, right? So just so you know, you can do it in the US. There are a few manufacturers in the US. You can find them, because I found 2 of them that I've worked with. One I stopped working with. The second one, I'm actually pretty happy with them. And the pricing is great, relatively. I mean, for US based, it was less than the other people, and it was good quality. But then you have overseas. Now, what happens is when you do China or, South America, wherever you go overseas, you have other things you have to consider. For example, their pricing on their games was great. And yes, there are some replays. The replays are on my Facebook page, which is the Entrepreneur Game. You'll find them on the Entrepreneur Game Facebook page. You'll actually find it on mine, which is Elliott Eddie. And I'll put that in the Zoom chat before we leave. And you'll also find them on YouTube, on our YouTube page from the Entrepreneur Game. So all the replays from Monday and Tuesday, this one will be on there, and Thursday and Friday will be on there as well. So anyway, when you get to the China, getting it from there was a whole lot cheaper than getting it from here. As far as face value is concerned, a whole lot cheaper. I think it was almost like half the price. However, there were other things to consider, right? For example, like we were talking last night, you got half the price on the game, but what is shipping, right? How do you pay for shipping? Because if you do it from China, you have to include shipping. Now, granted, if you go overseas, it's less expensive. He was telling us that it could run, shipping could, depending on how many games you get, shipping could be $800 to $1,200 or something for shipping, which is not bad depending on your games, because let's say if you were getting 2,000 games and it cost you, $1,000 in shipping, then that adds up to, maybe $2. What is that? $2 to the price of the game. So if you got your games for $4, now it's $6. If you're selling your game for $39, then that's a lot of profit, right? A lot of profit per game. So, these are things that you have to figure out because the money matters. So in manufacturing, you have to be very careful. Most people, when they're producing a board game or card game, the biggest ticket item is going to be your manufacturing. The way it works is the more games you order, the less the price for each game. Of course, the more money you're putting out your pocket, right? So if I order 1,000 game, they might, somebody, just for example, and that's not saying this is the price, but let's say I ordered 1,000 games and they told me the price per game for 1,000 game is $8 a game, right? So that means I have $8,000. But if I ordered 3,000 games, maybe they tell me the price is $5 a game. So now the game is less. I have more profitability in the game, but instead of spending $8,000, I got to spend $15,000 to get the $3,000. You see how that works out? So you have to keep that in mind. The more games you buy, the less the per game price, but of course, the more your total price is going to be. So keep that in mind. So anyway, that's your manufacturing portion. So you get through your manufacturing portion. You have to consider other things like warehousing. For example, if you have 1,000 games coming, where are you gonna put them? Do you have enough room in your living room or in your bedroom to put 1,000 games? Some people do, some people don't. What I did is I didn't. I ordered the first time. Well, yeah, the first time I ordered my games, I ordered 1,000. Was it 1,000? Yeah, I think I ordered 1,000 games. It might have been 1,000 or 2,000. I'm not quite sure right now. It was 50, and then I had 16. So I think it was 2,000 games. I ordered 2,000 games. And then, yeah, it was 2,000 games. Thank you. So first time I ordered 2,000 games. Didn't have enough room in my home to put 2,000 games up. My wife didn't want to sleep on a bed of games, so I had to figure something else out. So what I did is the games were already done. So I ordered, and the way I got my pricing down is, that's a great question. Did they come packaged individually, or do you have to put them together? That's a perfect question. So what I did is you could do it either way. You can have them package it all together. For them to package it all together cost more, right? Cost more money than I was able to spend. But what I figured out is that if I got the boards and the boxes from one place, and then I had a local printer. So I got the boards and boxes for the first game from out of New Jersey. I had a local printer who was printing up my money, my pads, and my cards, right? And they gave me a great price on that. So I had that. So then with the rest of the stuff, I found another wholesale company that I could get the pieces from, the little player pieces, and I think I spent like 3 cents each on the player pieces, and I got the dice in bulk. So what I did is, instead of paying it all at once for that big ticket, I saved some money by piecing it together. Had the boxes sent to the printer. I had all of the pieces, the dice and the player games sent to the printer. So the printer got all of that stuff. They put their printing together and they packaged it for me. And they they put the seal on it. They packaged it for me. So for me, it was cheaper to do it that way. Right, I saved some money by doing it that way because I counted the cost of what it would be if I had one person. Because I figured if I did that, plus not only would I have to do that, but I would have to have them ship it to me. And that we talking about thousands of pounds worth of shipping, which was going to be a big ticket item. And I didn't, I just didn't have it like that. I didn't have no money left over for that. So the way I did it, I got everything here to Virginia, and they put it together. So by the time I went to the printer to pick it up, everything was packaged, everything was perfect, everything was sealed up. So for me, when I did receive it, it was all packaged together. And then what I did is I went over to the U-Haul place, to the self-storage, and I rented a big self-storage unit, and I took the games and I put them in there, right? It was 50 games in a box. So I think I had about 16 boxes or something like that, big, huge boxes. And I took them all and I sat them in there. And then I started doing fulfillment. Fulfillment is when somebody orders it and you put your name and all that stuff on it and put it in the mail. That's fulfillment. So that's pulling it out of the warehouse, packaging it, putting it in a box, putting the address on it, and shipping it out. That's fulfillment. You have to figure out how you're going to do that because there are companies to do it. Me, myself, I was trying to save some money. So I figured I would do it myself. So every time somebody ordered the game, and right now the game's in 9 different countries. Every time somebody ordered the game, I went to the warehouse, I grabbed a bunch of games, brought them to my house. Those, my wife didn't mind me putting in the living room. And then every time somebody sent one in, I put it in the box, slapped that label on it, put it in the mail. And that's how I did it. The second order that I made, I did an order of 5,000 games. 5,000, yes. So we sold the other ones and I was able to get some more games, 5,000 games. So this time I didn't want to put, and this time I did it again. I didn't want to order it all together because the price they were charging me was astronomical. So I decided to tell them to send me this. And then I went and bought a printer. I bought an electric paper cutter. And I went and I basically put it together. You know, I had some of my friends that came over to help, and we basically put that game together ourselves. We took the boxes, we put everything in the little bags, sealed it up with the little heat sealer, popped them into the boxes, put the game and the rules on top of it, had the rules printer, put that on top of it, put the boxes on, and then shrink wrapped all of the boxes. And for that, I needed more space. Couldn't do that in the storage unit. Now, by doing it that way, I probably saved $12,000, you know. And it's kind of funny, right? You say you saved $12,000, you just really didn't spend it. Because, you know, if you didn't have the $12,000, did you really save it or did you just not spend it, right? It's always tricky. As we always talk about that when you go to this grocery store and you spend $50 on grocery and they say, oh, you saved $7. Like, no, I just spent $50. But that's neither here nor there. So anyway, I saved a lot of money by doing that, but it costs time. So in this business, you're going to spend something. Either you're going to spend money or you're going to spend time. Which one are you willing to give up, right? Because you're going to have to give up something, money or time. In this case, I was willing to give up time in order to save some money. In the future, I might have to give up that money, keep my time because, you know, I'm still working on those games. But anyway, so that way, in doing that, I had to have a space where I put the printer, had to have a space where I put the paper cutter, had to have a space where I can keep the games and a space where I can work on it, assembly line where I can bring other people in that were kind enough to help, where we can go and assemble it. So I had to get a warehouse space. So now I have a warehouse space and I have my games in there. So these are some of the things that you have to consider when you're doing your game, right? The major costs are going to be in manufacturing, and then you will have some costs in warehousing and fulfillment, depending on how, but you can control those costs depending on how you decide to do it, right? And then we'll go over a little bit of the last part, because this is about learning how to do this. And like I said, there are more specific things that you have to do, but this is the basics of what you have to do in order to get this done. And then you have the idea, once you have all of that, then it's about selling those games. It's about getting out there. So how did I get it out there? How did I get these games in 9 different countries? How did I get, was able to sell thousands of games? How was I able to do that? Well, you have to do a few things. First of all, you have to know your market, who your market is. It has to be specific. You can't just say, I want to sell this game to everybody that's breathing, right? I mean, it'd be nice to be able to do that, but that's not how I like to buy a vowel. That's not how marketing goes, right? You have to pinpoint a specific group of people that you are going to market to. Now, you can say those people are 25 to 55. You can say those people are women, or they're men, or they're people with jobs. Preferably, there'd be people with jobs. You can say that they're people who watch Shark Tank. You can say they're people who are parents or have been to a certain level of school. You can pick the people that you think would be the optimum choice for where your game or your product, whatever it is, will go to. but you do have to choose them. You do have to pinpoint them, right? Because if you don't pinpoint them, you're really not going to see good results, right? So I pinpointed who I was trying to target. And the next idea is to find out, where are they, right? If I want to do single family moms, or moms with children, and I think that mom with a 13-year-old child is the perfect person to get my game. Now I got to figure out, well, where do I find moms with 13-year-old children, right? You have to know that. That's going back to that market research. In market research, I have to figure out who my audience is, and then I have to know where they are, right? Because there's differences. I talk about this all the time in entrepreneurship. If you want to target a certain group of people online, social, like through social media, you have to know where they are. For example, if you want to target millennials, you're not really going to Facebook, because millennials are not, by and large, they're not really on Facebook. They're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're on these other sites, right? So you can't go in and say, well, my game is meant for 25-year-olds to 35-year-olds, and then I spend, all my money on Facebook, because that wouldn't be the best use of your money, or trying to get your target audience. By and large, another thing, if you need an older generation, maybe a generation that's watched Archie Bunker or something like that, that know the old days and talk about the old days, you're not going to go over to really Twitter and, Snapchat. Those are the ones that's on Facebook, right? So you need to know your audience so that you know where you can find them at. And that's just a small thing. I used to say that, for older people, and by older, I just mean older than millennials, generation, what is it, Y, that are, I guess that would be 45 to about 65 or somewhere in there. If you want to get those people, those people spend money, but they like to know information, right? They want to touch and feel everything. They want to know you. They want to know who are you? What's your mama name? What's your daddy name? What's your cousin in them? They want to know information about you. They want you to tell them something. They don't just want you to send them an email and say, buy my product, right? So you have to know who you're talking to. So you go through that, you do your social media pages, get a page everywhere. Of course, if you're not online, if you don't have a website in 2020 for your product, you do not exist, right? If you're not online, you just don't exist. You may want to sell your stuff in a store, but and that's all well and fine. But still, when people go to check on you, they're going online. So you need a web page, you need a Facebook page, you need a Twitter page, you need something online to show your presence. And if you're going to have an online presence, you have to keep it consistent. You have to always be online somewhere, because if you stop, people, the first thing they're going to look at, I can even tell you, when I go to somebody's Facebook page, first thing I look at, let's say if somebody friends me on Facebook, and I'm deciding whether I want to accept them on Facebook, because I don't accept everybody as a friend. I don't know if you do, but I don't, because my pages are business pages. The first thing I look at when I go to their page is, when was the last time they posted, right? So if your last time you posted was April of 2017, I'm going to deny you. I am. I don't even know why you're on today to send me an invite if you was on there last on 2017. So you have to stay consistent, because when people are looking for businesses and services, if you're not consistent and up to date, they're going to assume that you just went out of business, right? So if you're going to be in it, you got to be in it. You got to do it. You got to keep it up, right? So you have to do those things, and make sure if you have more than one page, you stay consistent throughout your page. Don't have one message on one page and another message on another, because that will tear you apart in marketing. It will confuse people. It will confuse people. If you have a message for this person over here and a message for that person, they're going to like, well, who is he talking to? You or me? Who are you looking at? I don't know. So you have to keep those things in mind. And there's a few other things that you have to keep in mind. For example, you want to have a blog. Blogs are popular, mostly because people are online searching for things by keywords. So if you have a blog, you can actually do a keyword or meta words, use meta tags so that you can get out there in the keywords and then have it about a particular subject. And they'll find you, right? So if you do a blog, that allows you to be seen as an authority in a particular subject. So for example, I have a blog. My blog is basically about entrepreneurship. You will see me push out the entrepreneur game and mention it and try to get you to my website, but you're going to see me give things of value about entrepreneurship. You know, how do you figure out your taxes as an entrepreneur? What type of business do you need as an entrepreneur? What are entrepreneurs doing now? So today, in this day and time we're in this pandemic that we're in, you know, I would personally be putting stuff out like, you know, what's happening for the entrepreneur, because you turn around and businesses are dropping like flies. So what do you need to do to be able to ride it out for the long haul, to be able to stay in businesses? You got businesses, big businesses like JCPenney, which is, you know, threatening to go under, and, you know, big businesses. You have restaurants that's been there, and it's amazing how you can have a business there today. You have a pandemic or any situation which causes your business to close or to slow down for a period of 4 weeks. Next thing you know, the business, they're going out of business. You know, they shut down, the doors are shut down, it's dark. If you have something in there, you can't find it, right? Because there are other aspects to business. Partnerships or affiliates. So there's another question out there. Do I have partnerships or affiliate marketing for the game? So I'll just be honest. I do work with people on the game, and that's always the intent. I had affiliate marketing. What I found out in that particular case is that it wasn't working for me. I had it out there. I was actually paying for a company to work through a company. I had people who would actually go on and become affiliates, and I would put the information up for them, but they were never really pushing it. I never really made any money off of the affiliate marketing. So I just stopped doing it. That's definitely on me. So affiliate marketing is a great thing where you have other people work in conjunction with you so that they are selling your product as well. They're pushing your product, and you get a piece of, you know, they usually give you something. So you'll earn money off of everything that's sold. So she said her daughter just created an activity book for kidpreneurs, and that's how she found this game. So you see, it's very effective. It is extremely effective. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put some information down. Let's stay in touch, because perhaps there's a way that we can work together, which there's the answer to the partnership question. I am more than happy to work with anyone who is interested in this subject, entrepreneurship and the board game. I think there's always a way that everybody can win. You know, it's always about a win-win. So I'm going to put my information up here in a few moments before we go, because we're going to shut it down in a few moments. And please, Jessica, let's stay in touch, and let's talk a little bit about it. I think it's incredible that your daughter created an activity for kidpreneurs. You know, I think that's the future right there. You know, children are starting businesses at younger and younger. She's 8 and she's already doing her thing. That is beautiful. I'm glad. They're starting their businesses younger and younger, and I think that is the best thing in the world. You know, if you have a young person, you know, get the game, because if you have a young person in their life, just by playing the game, it gives them that creative spark to make them want to consider those things. And even if they turn older and they decide they don't want to have a business, trust me, these 21st century skills are transferable to anything that they're doing. You know, critical thinking, investing, you know, negotiating, budgeting, marketing, you know, all of these things are transferable to anything that you're going to do. So thank you so much. That's great. I'm excited for her. Yeah, at 8 years old, she started. She's going to be a powerhouse, I tell you. Now, before we go, there's something else that I want to show you guys, and I'm going to share my screen in a moment. So we started out, and we're still going to continue talking with other people. But just for this, because I know that there's other people who are interested in learning how to take their idea and turn it into a board game, I actually created something to go a little further. It's an online course that teaches exactly what I've been talking about now, but it goes into depth with all of these things. So let me share my screen real quick so you can see what it is. Okay, I hope you guys can see this. So what I did is I have a school, an online school, which I call Dream Child University. And it's because I want everybody to dream. Take those dreams that were in you from childhood, and I want you to dream those dreams, and I want you to live them out. So this one is about creating a board game. And this is an e-course. This is separate from this summit. You don't have to get the e-course because you're watching the summit. This is something totally separate that I wanted to make available. But this is called my board and card game creation e-course. And this is what you'll get in going through the e-course. So the first one, you have a free interview that we have with the attorney on Monday. You have several sections. I think there's 6 sections. Section 1 is to take your idea and create a fabulous game around it. So it goes into what is your idea for the game, what problem does your game solve, or what value does it provide, who is your target audience, the mechanics, how do we play your game, and what are the rules of the games. It goes in depth on how to create these things and answer those questions so you can create your game. Then we have how to create a prototype. There's 2 messages on how to create a prototype because there's a little bit of information on how to do that specifically so that you don't waste your money. The main thing is that you want to do this, but you want to avoid all of the pitfalls and traps that people like me and other people before me have fallen into, so that you're not spending your money or mismanaging your funds that you really need in order to do this. How do you do market research for your game? We talked a little bit about that today. This goes a little bit more in depth. And perfecting your game, and that's coming back off the market research. How do you take the information you gain from market research in order to put it inside the game and perfect your game? Next, we talk a little bit about business, because after you get those things, you got to have a solid business, because that's going to help you. How do you set up your official business? What are copyrights, and what is a poor man's copyright? I know some of you might have heard that. Is that effective or not? Trademarks. Do you need a trademark for your game? Do you need to get a patent? And what is a poor man's patent? Just like a poor man's copyright, there's something called a poor man's patent. And non-disclosure agreements. You really need those, and knowing how to do those well, because not everybody is as upfront and nice and kind as we like to hope they are. I do have the interview, and the interviews are free. So even if you log in, you can also see those for free. Interview with the manufacturer. Then we go into manufacturing your games, part 1 and part 2. How do you warehouse your games? Investors, and this is where we get into some really good information. Investors, how do you find investors, and how do you get that money, right? Because some people want to create games, but maybe you don't have all of the finances. So how do you find people and entice them to invest in the games with you? Next, we have crowdfunding. What is it? What is crowdfunding, and how to do it successfully? I crowdfunded with my game. My game costs a bit of money. I put my game on a site called Kickstarter. You have Kickstarter and you have Indiegogo. They are crowdfunding. They're sort of a business version of GoFundMe. Not really the same as GoFundMe, but you can actually get people around the world to chip in money to bring your game to life. And the money that they chip in, they're not investors, so you don't give them a percentage of anything. You just get to use their money. What you do is you give them rewards. So, for me, if you gave me $45, I was going to give you a copy of the game as soon as it was manufactured. If you gave me $75, I was going to give you a copy of the game, and I was going to give you one of my books on entrepreneurship, or maybe a book on speaking, public speaking. So I had different levels of what you would get if you gave money to it. I put my Kickstarter campaign on Kickstarter and I put it up for $10,000. I was asking for $10,000. I had over $10,000 in less than 5 hours, right? By the time my Kickstarter ended, which was, I think I had it up there for 3 weeks, I had like $24,000 that people around the world gave me to manufacture my game, because they believed in the game and I gave them the vision of what it was that I wanted to do. So that goes into that. And then section 5, bringing your game to market and making money. So it shows you about awards and certification. Like mine has STEM certification. There are tons of awards, board games awards, parent choice awards, all types of awards that give credence. And it's almost like someone is vouching for your game. Selling online, how do you do that? How do you put it in a physical store? How do you get corporate sponsorship for your sales? And what about giveaways and donations to aid in sales? Do you do them? Do you give away your product for free? How much of it do you do? And then a final one is some final thoughts on how you can succeed. It's going to be hard. It may be hard, because nothing worth having comes that easy. But there's a way to excel and succeed in it. So that is an e-course. I'm going to send out an email to everyone. There is a cost for the e-course. If you got the e-course tonight, the cost of the e-course is $279. So it's a one-time charge, $279. And as you can see, the amount of information that you're actually getting for the $279 I think that's, that's a very little price for the information that you're getting that's going to save you tons and show you how to bring your game to life. Remember, the board and card game industry alone, just the table board and the card game industry is a $12 billion industry a year. 12 billion with a B, right? So the market people say that over the next 4 years, between now and 2023, actually it's 3 left, it's going to increase by $5.9 billion. So where's that $5.9 billion? It's coming from people like you, people like me, who see a need in the market, who have an idea for a board game, create that board game, and then sell it to people around the world. That's it. That doesn't even include video games and all that other stuff. That's just board games and card games. So whatever your idea is, yeah, let me tell you, if you got an idea for it and you think it's a solid idea, it probably is. All you have to do is get some information behind it now, right? So I'm going to send out that information in the email, just so those people who want to take advantage of this e-class, be my guest. If you have some questions for me, be my guest on that too. So give me a second. Let me put down my email address. If you have any more questions, we're getting ready to leave. So if you have any more questions, go ahead and send it through. So my email address is info@entrepreneurboardgame.com. My website is entrepreneurboardgame.com. entrepreneurboardgame.com. If you visit me on Facebook, my name is Elliott Eddie. Just look me up from Elliott Eddie, or you can look up the game, the Entrepreneur Game by EE Speaks. EE Speaks is the name of my company, is the name of my brand rather. EE stands for Elliott Eddie Speaks. That's the name of my brand, not the name of my company, but the name of my brand. So all of my games are under the EE Speaks brand. And finally, if you look me up on anything, just put in the Entrepreneur Game. If you go on to Instagram, it's the Entrepreneur Game. Everything is the Entrepreneur Game. And just so you'll know, I'm going to drop this. I told you I have 4 games. So what I did is, when I had the Entrepreneur Game, I expanded it because I thought I was doing a good thing. So what I did is I have the original. I have one that is in Spanish, totally, just all Spanish. This might be a thought for some of you guys out there. Nobody really markets to the Spanish-speaking communities in their language. So I did the Entrepreneur Game in their language. 3rd game is called Vetrepreneur. It is an entrepreneur game specifically designed for our veterans coming back from duty, coming back into civilian living. This one is for them. And then I have one more game called Rise of the Returning Citizen. This game is specifically for people who are incarcerated or coming out of incarceration, because they need another way in order to get back in society. It's hard for somebody who has a record to get in and earn a living wage. So I made an entrepreneur game specifically for them that will help them take the skills and talents that they have, come back into society, earn a living wage, and produce for themselves and for their communities and for their families. One other game is on here. After your game idea crashes, how you find it. No, hold on, let me read this. After your game idea crashes, how to you find it in you to keep going and work through the major hurdles before you. Okay. So basically, the idea that the question is, if after your idea crashes, or if you have a setback, or if you've planned something and it doesn't go like you planned it, how do you find it in your heart? How do you find the strength and the positiveness to keep going and to work through it? What I find out when it rains, it pours. It really does. And most of the times when something happens and something crashes, it crashes big time. So for me, I'm just one of the things, I'm just persistent, and my wife says that I'm stubborn, that I'm going after. But here's the deal. If you have something of value and you know that it's of value, you know that what you have, the idea that you have is a great idea, and you know that it's going to benefit people. Let's take the money thing out of it, because this is not even about money, right? You produce value and the money will come. but this is not about money. This is about something that's in your soul, something that's in your spirit. If you have something that you know is going to produce value, that you know you need to get out of there, then you are going to find, first of all, you're going to find a way in order to keep going. Sometimes what happens is, I think that things that happen redirect you in certain instances. So for example, when I was first doing it, I told you about the Kickstarter campaign that I did, and I got this money and all that other stuff. What I didn't tell you is that was the second Kickstarter campaign I did. When I first wanted to get this game, I had no money. I had the idea. I had a great idea. I knew I had something that was going to help. I had no money to do it, right? So I needed help. I went out and did a Kickstarter campaign. I had that Kickstarter campaign on Kickstarter for almost 2 months. I was asking for $20,000. That's what I really needed. I think I may have collected $1,046 over that, and I was sending it out. I was sending it out to people who knew me, to family, to friends, fraternity brothers. I was sending it out to everyone, and nobody would support the game. Nobody would share it. Nobody would like it. Nobody would push it. Nobody would do it at all. And to me, that was crushing, right? Crushing, because I knew that I needed that help in order to make it done, to get it done. But nobody wanted to hear from me. Nobody was in my corner. And that was crushing. But you know what I said? The only thing I can do is keep trying, because I knew I had something special. So if you have something that you know is going to produce value, you know is special, even if it doesn't work out the way you want the first time around, don't give up. Just do not give up. What you have to do is you have to pick yourself up. If you need to cry, go ahead and cry. If you need to be upset for a while and not speak to people and shut your door, then you go ahead and do that. Heal up. Let that wound close. Let that wound healed up. You may have the scar from it, but the wound will heal, right? Maybe you need to take a step back and do something else for a minute, but don't give it up, right? Come back to it. Think of another way that can be done. They used to say that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Now, I don't know why people were trying to find multiple ways to skin cats, but they said there's more than one way. So what did I change that helped me get the support? I went out and I talked to more people. I just kept talking about my idea, talking to more people. I never stopped talking about it. And eventually I ran up on somebody who was in a position to help. I ran up on somebody who knew a community of people who like to invest in inventors just like me. So what I did is, at the time I was selling paparazzi jewelry. I stayed diligent in that. But every chance I got, I continued to talk about my entrepreneur game, right? Didn't have a piece of paper prototype. I kept talking about it. I kept pushing at it. I kept saying, you know what? This is going to be a great game. I kept psyching myself up. And that's what changed. What I did to change is that I would not give it up. I kept talking about it. I kept saying that this is going to be. And every person I saw, I talked to about it. And eventually I talked to the right person about what I had, right? So there's always going to be somebody that's in a position to help you. You just have to find out who that person is. And the only way you can find out who that person is to continue pushing and sharing what you have, sharing your value. That's how I did it. That's how I did it. I just wouldn't give up, right? And that's the same thing you're going to have to do, not give up. Exactly that, right? Any more questions for us? We're running up on 8 o'clock. I don't want to keep you guys all night long. I hope this has been beneficial. I wasn't supposed to be the one speaking tonight. It was supposed to be another game inventor who sold over 200,000 copies. You know, that's 7-figure money that he brought in. But I think it happened the way it's supposed to happen. Maybe whatever I said or whatever I had to share was what someone needed to hear. So I got my information up there. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I am more than happy to share the information. I'll send everything out in the email. You'll have that in a separate email by morning. Thank you so much for coming and spending this time with me. Thank you. I'm glad you had the information was great. Thank you so much. And like I said, let me know if I can do anything else. I really want to see everybody succeed. I want to see your dreams take hold, succeed, and change the world. So you guys have a great evening. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back tomorrow at 7 o'clock. I have an incredible Zach Edwards. He's going to be here, and he is incredible. Oh, he is incredible. So please come on back tomorrow. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Good night.